One of the other mysteries of Attack on Titan final episode season 4 part 2 finale was the relationship between Eren and Mikasa. Their dynamic is rooted in the core of the story, both being the male and female protagonists of the series respectively. I know you guys seem to enjoy the Eren and Historia dynamic video, so why not do a video on this relationship and this dynamic. The relationship is one that almost every Attack on Titan fan knows about. It's very popular and obviously important to the story of Attack on Titan. For some reason there isn't an explanatory video covering the relationship or dynamic in any great detail, I think, so I've taken it upon my shoulders to make that video. Mikasa Ackerman was the first character that Isayama created after deciding on the basic plot of Attack on Titan. Isayama based Mikasa's design off a woman he met while working at a part-time job before starting his manga career. So even Eren wasn't a thing until after Mikasa, weirdly enough. A lot of people don't know this, but Mikasa is named after a Japanese battleship, and her character is also based off a game character called Sumika from a game called Love, which I will talk about at the end of this video. So all of this establishes the importance of her character straight off the bat, which would also explain why Isayama's signature is a chibi Mikasa. But enough of that, let's get into this video. Mikasa Ackerman was established very early into the story as a young girl born to an Asian mother of royal Amazabito blood, and her father was a member of the Ackerman clan. These two bloodlines can't be controlled by the founder, and both oppose the king's philosophy, according to Kenny's grandfather. The core belief of a royal family since Karl Fritz has been this pacifist ideology, which wants all Eldians to pay for their sins. Combining the characteristics of both bloodlines, she's born what seems like the freest person in the world. Mikasa by blood opposes the king's pacifist beliefs inherently, which is fitting for a girl who has power and also wants to fight for survival. But this moves us on to why she wants to fight for survival in the first place. So as you all know, Mikasa is a girl who lives with her family in peace. But in an alternate timeline shown in the Lost Girls OVA, the 3 traffickers that killed her parents didn't turn up, meaning that her parents survived. In this timeline, Eren explains his goal of becoming a soldier to see the outside world to Mikasa. He asks her to join him enter and explore the forest. I'm sure all of this sounds pretty important, and that's because it is. In the story of Attack on Titan, there's a lot of emphasis on this idea. Mr. Blau, Sasha's father, raised Sasha as a hunter of the forest. He claims that the rules of a forest are to kill or be killed. But when Sasha was exposed to the world, it just ended up being a much larger forest, where the rules were just as ruthless. So Mr. Blouse thinks that individuals should bear their own sins and keep their children out of it. Keep their children out of the forest. Or they'll keep running in circles. They'll get lost. So when Eren decided to enter the forest, this all came into play. It was because of his conquest for knowledge, for things he didn't really understand. He claims to have already explored this forest, and it's a lot smaller than Mikasa thinks it is, so she shouldn't be scared. But little does Eren know that now he's doomed to play by the harsh rules of his greater world. He asks Mikasa to join him, otherwise she'll always remain cattle for her entire life. He tells her if she lives out her life in ignorance to what's out there, she'll be slaughtered like chicken by a stronger force of nature. Eren's words give Mikasa the resolve to enter the forest. It gives her confidence. Eren and Mikasa see the dead bodies of the traffickers who in the main timeline would have gone on to kill her parents. However, in this timeline, they've been devoured by wolves. This is a metaphor for the nature of the world and the forest and how uncontrollable it is. This is when she asks Eren what's gonna kill her, and Eren replies with the bone-chilling words, a great power. Assumably something that she can't control and is obedient to. Eren thinks his great power will kill Mikasa. However, Grisha thinks that this great power that urges Eren to fight can only be stopped by Mikasa. When she doesn't try and stop him within his timeline, what happens is Eren tries to escape the walls with Armin, but it fails horribly and Eren dies. So that was how Eren and Mikasa met in another timeline. However, in the main timeline, she would meet Eren for the first time when 3 traffickers wouldn't be killed by wolves, and they would instead arrive at Mikasa's home and kill her parents, attempting to kidnap her for the purpose of selling her. Frightened and shocked, Mikasa was rescued by Eren, who managed to kill 2 of the kidnappers, but was overwhelmed by the 3rd one, and on the verge of being strangled. Eren desperately urges Mikasa to fight so that she can win, words that would continue to resonate with Mikasa forever. Mikasa recalls a memory where she observes a butterfly being killed by a mantis. We can also see this scene within the OVA. This scene serves to prove once again that the forest and the world are cruel places. The strong would always prey on the weak, and you'd have to be strong in order to survive. A supernatural power then activates within Mikasa, unlocking a power within her Ackerman powers. These powers and the words of Eren allow her to kill the trafficker. When Grisha arrives with the military police, Mikasa was given Eren's scarf and accepted into his family, the scarf becoming a reminder of how she gained her new strength. Mikasa then went on to live with Eren's family until the fall of Warmaria, where she witnesses the death of Eren's mother and he's vowed to kill all Titans as they escape. Her dedication to Eren would be so great it would lead her to follow Eren into the Survey Corps. It's kind of annoying when people say Mikasa only really cares about Eren. It's rather his memories of Eren heal Mikasa's heart and give her power and resolve quite literally. This encounter between Eren and Mikasa, according to Isayama, is accidentally a parallel to the meeting between Casca and the main antagonist Griffith from a manga Berserk. Kasuga becomes dedicated to Griffith after he saves her and is moved by his great ambitions. Although both eventually separate as she realizes Griffith's flaws through Guts, an important power dynamic was created between both these relationships. When Eren freed Mikasa from her weakness, he unironically made her his slave, so now Eren is her savior, but also her new family. Now they're not biological siblings, obviously. Rather, she was adopted into the Jaeger family, and her newfound love for them is maxed out in the guidebooks. From a conception of the story, there's been this idea that Eren and Mikasa are kind of like siblings, or similar to siblings rather. Eren considers both to have the same parent-like figures, and so does Mikasa. The guidebook also elaborates on the idea that Mikasa loves Eren as a brother. Now, Mikasa's kin-altruistic love for her brother does transform into romantic love, very obviously in the future, but it should be noted that at the beginning of the story, Mikasa's devotion to Eren was purely platonic because Eren gave her strength and a home. Their sibling relationship is a parallel to Grisha and his sister's relationship. For example, them running is a mirror to Eren and Mikasa running. This isn't the first time we've seen imagery like this. Ramsey and Hale's relationship is almost identical, as you can see them running as well. Even in the future, in an alternate timeline when they decide to run away to avoid Paradise's fate, Mikasa and Eren run away in a similar pose, which is a little bit weird. But as you can see later, this transitions into romantic love. When not to save her boyfriend, she blushes, meaning she's gone from obviously loving Eren as a brother to loving him romantically. Which is pretty obvious, since she gets jealous when Eren's in the company of other girls like Sasha or Historia. Now it's not morally wrong that she went from loving her adopted brother as a brother to a romantic interest, but I can see why it causes social discomfort. Even Isayama stated himself that dating somebody in the same class as you is weird because you're kind of brought up like siblings, so I imagine he finds the Eren and Mikasa dynamic confusing at the very least. When asked about Eren and Mikasa's dynamic or relationship, in an interview he said that Mikasa's growth probably involves separation from Eren. He took a dig at female mangakas by saying, a lot of them think that male mangaka have this tendency to reject the notion of fate and predeterminism, like that's somehow wrong, but forget that they themselves usually create works that approve of fate. For example, in the story, a person might meet their lover and fall in love with them at first sight, so they're forced to accept that trajectory of their life, which is already predestined, and anybody in the story who interferes with that fated love or affects their serene life is portrayed as a villain. Now this might be a hasty generalization on Isayama's end, but he said he's not talking about all females here. With his own mentality as a male mangaka, he thinks it's pretty pitiful that Mikasa's life only revolves around staying together with Eren, or only being there as his potential love interest. Maybe to Mikasa that's a wonderful thing, being with Eren forever, but Isayama said if he were to draw the separation of Eren and Mikasa the way he wants, he said he feels that his portrayal would make a lot of readers angry, because Mikasa would have to pick sides between Eren's selfish freedom and Armin's selfless freedom. So he's kind of having a dig at shippers who want two characters to end up together, and he acknowledges that he can't draw the story the way he wants because of them. Whether he's talking about female mangaka or shippers specifically, I'll leave that up for interpretation. Jokingly, it's been stated that Mikasa is a strong female character, which means she has no embarrassing stories according to Spillfun Titan. Also, her newfound strength becoming her main trait was further demonstrated through Mikasa quickly proving her skills and being praised as one of the best trainees in military history, as she gains first place ranking in the 104th Survey Corps. Although she is physically strong, the meaning of strength within Attack on Titan is more than that. It considers both physiology and psychology. Mikasa is physically strong, but she's insecure about the psychological side of her power, as she constantly claims to be a strong female several times throughout the story, just to reinforce it to herself. It's almost if her identity revolves around the fact that she has power, but doesn't know if she has a resolve to execute her actions, kind of like the opposite of how Eren feels. That would explain why she felt she didn't have the resolve to stop Eren's march of fate, which would ultimately lead to his death in every timeline we see. Over the course of the story, Mikasa becomes more and more attached to Eren, even scarily delusional over how much she believes that Eren needs her, and that he only seeks to move forward so he can reunite with her. Eren doesn't like the fact that he's viewed as her little brother, because this insane overprotectiveness annoys him really. She always outclasses Eren strength-wise, so Eren builds this inferiority complex. This contributes to Eren's self-proclaimed arrogance, believing that he's a hero who can save humanity alone, hence he overly mocks and headbutts her. He even finds Mikasa irritating at times. However, this would all change. At the end of Season 2, they encounter the Smiling Titan that ate Eren's mother, Vedina Fritz Titan. Mikasa is unable to defend Eren due to her injury, but Hannes buys him enough time to escape. However, they're unable to escape. Eren tries biting himself to transform, but nothing happens. When his father-like figure Hannes is killed, Eren breaks down and cries over the fact that nothing's changed since the day his mother died. He's still too weak to deliver his promise on eradicating the Titans and protecting those that he loves. Mikasa then asks him to listen to her. She tells him that he showed her how to live with purpose. He wrapped his scarf around her, and she's grateful for that. She smiles with tears in her eyes. And this could have been the moment where Mikasa confessed her love for him and even kissed Eren. But apparently Isayama was too embarrassed to draw that, even though he's drawn some really weird stuff in the past. Anyway, her words would move Eren, who then vows to wrap his scarf around her as many times as she wants, punching the Smiling Titan and triggering the Founding Titan's power to make the other mindless Titans attack the Dina Fritz Titan. He carries Mikasa away on his back and sends the Titans after Reiner and Berthold. Because of all of this, Eren finally doesn't see Mikasa as this obstacle that he has to overcome, but rather somebody he can depend on and protect. From here on out, when Mikasa helps him, instead of being uncomfortable, he thanks her and even begins to take note of her health. It's around now Eren realizes that Mikasa has feelings for him, but the issue is Eren doesn't know if they're natural or not. And this moves us on to Eren's confrontation years later. When the survey corps visit Mali in season 4, Mikasa realizes that Eren is beginning to change. During a talk with Kayomi, he leaves, and Mikasa goes outside to look for him. Looking at a cluster of refugee tents, at first she disapproved of him being outside alone, but she realizes that he's looking at the boy who stole from Sasha and Levi, as well as the boy's family. Eren tells her that these are the tents of the people who've lost their homes from war. The people here are like the two of them, their families who've had everything taken away from them. This is when he asks Mikasa why she cares about him so much, whether it's because he saved her when they were kids, or because he's family. Mikasa says family unconfidently, when the boy's father walks up to them and interrupts. Eren and Mikasa's conversation is cut short. This is when they all enjoy a meal together, and the two groups get tipsy and open up to each other, turning it into a party. This is the last time we see Eren happy, tipsy, cozy with his friends and Mikasa. The forum for the association to protect the subjects of Ymir goes really poorly, when the speaker only defends the subjects of Ymir who are not Eldian, leaving Eren disheartened. Mikasa realizes it was that day Eren left her side, and wouldn't see him for months. Obviously, the next time Mikasa would see Eren is in Liberia when he attacks it. During that time gap, what happened was this conversation between Eren and Zeke. The topic was about the headaches that Mikasa suffers from. Eren suspects that the Ackermans suffer from his engineered behaviour that forces them to serve and protect whoever they consider their master or host, something I've talked about in the past. This is typically called the slave-master relationship or the Ackerman curse by fans. In the Attack on Titan Answers guide, Isayama stated that Mikasa, Levi and Kenny are all part of the same Ackerman bloodline. However, their reasons for protecting their respective companions isn't anything to do with their bloodline, but rather is to do with their character. That would explain why Zeke says that he's never heard of any sort of curse that causes Ackerman to protect the host. Rather, he thinks that Mikasa's affection towards and desire to protect Eren is simply because she loves him. This is when Eren thinks about Historia, who says, well then. And I have said in the past, this proves that Eren is still conflicted over who loves him, who doesn't love him, if he even wants to go ahead and have a child, and ultimately if any of it even matters. I know there's people out there who hate this conception. They want everything to be clear cut. They want the protagonist to like only one person. But if you think about it, that isn't normal or natural. Remember what I said earlier, Isayama rejects the idea that a person will meet their lover and fall in love with them at sight, and so are then forced to accept that their life is already predestined. He hates that entire notion. I'm sure you guys personally have liked, gone out with, or even had a crush on more than one person. And if you think about it, the main inspiration for Attack on Titan is literally a game about the player having the freedom to choose who they love, kill, save, and how they finish the game. So Eren having options kind of humanizes him in my opinion. I don't know why people hate that idea. Maybe Isayama has a point with the digs at predeterminism. Back to the conversation with Zeke, Eren replies that there was no point in deciding who loved him, or who he loved, or who he wanted to have a child with, because he'd only live for another 4 years. So there was really no point. Eren could never really live a normal life, and he never got the chance to lead a normal life since his mother's death. So once Eren had accepted that Mikasa loves him from her own free choice, and only has 4 years of her life left, so he can't be with her, he executes the rumbling. He decides to push her and his friends away. In order to become, as the final guidebook would say, the villain for their sake, he shoulders all of their sins, the sins of his father and ancestors, to save his people. He attacks Liberia and kills innocent people, even children. Mikasa tells Eren what he's done here is despicable, and that there's no going back from this. She knows what he's become. He's become just like the people who killed her family and friends. Eren is now like that mantis that attacks the butterfly. But she still can't let Eren go. He's still her savior. On their return, Eren tells her that her instincts as an Ackerman are the sole reason why Mikasa has stuck by him for so long. Bringing up the example of her attempted kidnapping, Eren reminds Mikasa that she only acted when he told her to. Realizing this, Mikasa tries to justify it, but Eren remarks that Ackermans also suffer from severe headaches due to fighting their true selves, fighting the urge to protect their host. Recalling that even happened to her. Eren flatly states that the real Mikasa died that day in a hut, and all that's left is a shell of a former self, nothing but Ackerman instincts. Mikasa is unable to speak and begins to break down and cry, when Eren claims that he has always hated her, calling her nothing more than a slave. At this stage, Eren remembers Zeke telling him what the Ackerman curse is, that it's not real, so he probably suspects that Mikasa does genuinely love him. But the only reason he told Mikasa all of this, but he despises her, is so he can push her and his friends away from him. Perhaps he's trying to force himself to hate his friends and to despise Mikasa, so he's forced himself into his facade. Eren is slowly becoming what he hates, which I find oddly strange and inconsistent since he hates facades. Eren tries to convince Armin not to pursue Connie so he can save Falco, but is unsuccessful. As Armin is leaving, Mikasa tries to ask Armin what they're going to do about Eren, causing Armin to lash out for not focusing on more pressing issues. Annie even calls out Mikasa multiple times later on, questioning if she's capable of even having the resolve to kill Eren. This has always been an issue that the readers and characters alike despise Mikasa for, but she isn't completely self-absorbed in Eren. She has shown merciful tendencies and only kills when absolutely necessary. When she saw what Eren did in Marley, she looked incredibly heartbroken and even said what Eren did was unjustifiable. I think she also understands kids like Gabby have been indoctrinated since they are born, so saves Gabby from Kaya. Mikasa even visits Sasha's grave, so she definitely cares about other people. I'm sure she cares about Armin as well, but I will admit she is overly invested in Eren to the degree that it clouds her judgment. So moving into the manga ending territory. Ultimately, when it came down to killing Eren, she needs to make a decision in chapter 138. Torn between her loyalty to her duty and for her love Eren, Mikasa can't bring herself to kill Eren despite all the genocide that he's committed. Eren tries to convince her to kill him and move on by showing her an alternate timeline in which she admitted that Eren was her savior, and Eren had sacrificed Armin as well as condemning Historia to hell. In that timeline, they ran away together. Both lacked the resolve and moved to a cabin in the middle of the wilderness. Eren tells her to let go of him because he was always destined to die. He only has 4 years left, and he's come to the end of those 4 years now. What's the point of loving somebody if it's only for 4 years? So within his timeline, as Eren fades away and dies, Mikasa says see you later, as if she's gonna see him again. After seeing this, she finds a resolve to kill him, because she knows that's not the real Eren. His march of fate will always lead to his death, and she now understands they can never be together. But she wraps his scarf around her, because she will always love him, despite his atrocities. It's a heartbreaking moment, but the moment where Eren ultimately predicted, and even forced upon Mikasa his own death, in the exact image that Ymir wanted. She then decapitates and kisses Eren's head. A lot of people dislike this kiss because they claim it's necrophilia, which I don't think it is in hindsight, because if you look at the definition of necrophilia, it's, I quote, the attraction to a dead body. I don't think Mikasa is attracted to Eren because he's dead, or likes the severed head element. Not that in particular. Rather, she's kissing him because she's saying goodbye. It's kind of like hugging somebody after they're dead. But even then, it kind of depends on your interpretation of that definition, because she was technically still attracted to the head on a physical level because it was Eren. However, Eren was dead. Eren might technically be still alive after the decapitation because your brain is still functioning a few seconds after you've been decapitated. I will say Eren definitely was not plucking his lips. I mean, his eyes were shut. He couldn't even see what was happening, so I doubt he would know that Mikasa is trying to kiss him. If anything, my main concern might be consent, since he did have his eyes closed and he was decapitated. But if I'm being completely honest, clearly both have mutual feelings for each other, so Isayama probably overlooked this whole element. When I said it's mutual, I'm referring to Eren's confession at the end of the manga about loving Mikasa to Armin in the last chapter. The main reason Isayama depicted the kiss that way was possibly to refer to Caravaggio's art, but the romantic nature of a decapitated head is something that we don't commonly see. I know Requiem of the Rose King has imagery very similar to that, and maybe there's other manga, there's other anime out there that's similar as well. But remember, this is Attack on Titan, it's a plus 18 TV series, so you're gonna see stuff like this. And if anything, I thought the imagery was quite cool. Anyway, Ymir watches him and smiles. According to Eren, Ymir chose Mikasa to execute her wishes because she saw something in Mikasa that nobody else could see, including Eren. It was never fully explained what it was, but it was something that they couldn't fathom. I've wondered what it could be, and the only thing it could be is Ymir sees herself in Mikasa. What I mean by this is Ymir and Mikasa are somewhat mirror characters of each other. Eren and Mikasa's relationship is somewhat like Ymir's and King Fritz's relationship in Ymir's eyes, but in my opinion, they're not really that similar. I think they're actually opposed to each other. Ymir is somewhat the antithesis of Mikasa. Mikasa is everything that she wanted to be, more so. Ymir was brought down by environment, manipulated, used, abused, to the point of accepting death as an escape. Mikasa was supported by her environment, motivated by her gift to continue living. She smiled because Mikasa did something that she couldn't, and that was to let her evil abuser and lover die. Rather, Mikasa chose to kill her abusive lover by her own hand, becoming the physical embodiment of breaking free from her abuser King Fritz. Once this reenactment was complete, and Mikasa killed Eren, Ymir finally let go of the world. She let go of what was binding her to this world, and she disappeared. This is when we see an alternate timeline, in which she chose not to save her abuser, and chose to live freely with her daughters. A very empowering message that free the girl who seek the world free of fate and curses, is what I would've, should've, and could've said. And it would have been an uplifting ending to the theme of slave and master, but the truth is she's not free. I know at the beginning of the video I said that Mikasa was born free because of her bloodline. Just because she can't be controlled by the founder, and her family opposes that core philosophy, doesn't mean that she can't be drunk on something. It would be like me claiming that I'm a good footballer or I'm a good basketballer because both of my parents were athletes. That just doesn't work or have to be the case. But the irony being that Mikasa didn't have the strength to fully separate herself from Eren after his death, just like Isayama wanted. Just like Ymir couldn't after a millennia of serving King Fritz. So the cycle just continues. Isayama's final message to us, the readers, was that everyone in this world is a slave to something. Whether it be alcohol, power, fate, freedom, or even love. It's all unavoidable. A world without freedom and curses is impossible. For the concept of freedom to exist, so must a slave. So Ymir moved on according to a lie, basically. Mikasa didn't truly kill the bond between her and Eren, and separate herself. She still wept and mourned his death, all the way until her own death. This means that Ymir allowed 80% of the world's population to die for essentially nothing. She was ultimately evil, the most despicable girl to live. The one who made a deal with the devil. Ymir is commonly depicted with an apple. During his transaction, a reference to what seems like the apple Eve stole from God's tree, to bring evil into reality. Not only was the rest of the world right to despise Ymir, but Isayama has purposely taken the route to antagonize her by using an arguably misogynistic allegory. Yuji Kaji, Eren's voice actor, gave a very interesting interpretation to why he thinks Eren didn't pay any attention to Mikasa throughout the series, and even confess. He thinks that Eren cared more about Armin than Mikasa, because he knew no matter what, even if he abused Mikasa, even if he committed genocide, atrocities, no matter what, Mikasa would always be attached to Eren. The same way people kind of mistreat family, but know that their family will love them unconditionally. Humans abuse these bonds, and Eren took Mikasa's love for granted. So according to Kaji, Eren never really took the time to stop and think about Mikasa, whether he likes Mikasa, because he was so self-absorbed in his own freedom. The epilogue of Attack on Titan reveals that Mikasa ended up having a family in her own years after Eren's death. Her family regularly visited Eren's grave, which shows that Mikasa never really truly forgot about her former love, and could never disconnect herself from him, although she was technically able to move on. In one of the scenes, Mikasa is seen with her family, with a man and a young girl visiting Eren's grave. Since the girl has black hair like Mikasa, it's assumed that that's Mikasa's daughter, standing with the man behind her. Pretty much officially, Jon and Mikasa have a child together. People claim they don't know who this is, but it's Jon for sure. His hairstyle is almost identical to Jon's. Jon also had a massive crush on Mikasa. He falls in love with her at first sight, drawing her in admiration, and even constantly hates people who abuse Mikasa. I can't think of anybody else. It looks like Jon, come on. People also claim that Mikasa kept her wrist wrapped, meaning she never passed on her clan's tattoo. But Mikasa doesn't wrap it because she hasn't passed it down yet. It's rather because her own mother wanted to keep it a secret. The Eldian royal family hunted both the Asians and the Ackerman, because they're the only ones who could defy their authority and powers. So Mikasa shouldn't really be walking around telling the world who she is exactly, so it makes sense she still has the wrap on. It's definitely implied that Mikasa and Jon became a couple with a child at the end of the story. This is funnily ironic considering that Eren wanted Mikasa to move on after 10 years. Just to prove that Mikasa definitely had a child, at the end of the manga, far into the future, we see a kid who has features that looks really similar to Mikasa's dark hair and has a bandana, so I wouldn't be surprised if that kid is a descendant of Mikasa far into the future. I did say I was going to talk about this love reference, but this video is already long as it is, to where Mikasa is based off the character Sumika. Sumika is very important to the game of love, and Mikasa was the first character that Isayama designed. So if he did base it off her, I think that kind of sets up a story that Isayama wanted to create, and had a very specific ability within that game, which relates to what I think Mikasa might be capable of doing. But this all kind of wraps into a anime original ending. I might do a video on it, like another video on why I think an anime original ending could happen, and within that I'll talk more about it. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, I'd probably recommend watching my videos on whether I think an anime original ending is going to happen, what I think could happen for an anime original ending, and I'll link it right here. Anyway, thanks for watching the entirety of this video, hopefully you did. If you enjoyed it, like the video, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Peace.